Hello, hello. I may stand up, so I feel tall for once. And it's very, empowering, especially for women. So there's two words which I will use to start this introduction about intersectionality. One is disadvantage, and the other is discrimination. Disadvantages and discrimination have been the core of why we haven't been able, as women or as minorities, to reach the stage at work, and not only at work, in music and in tech, which is what this conference is about, to reach not even the majority, but never the equality. So the numbers are clear. In music, the last YouGov statistics that were published in the BBC in the UK were that out of 200 festivals, 15% were female artists, which is kind of tragic in a way. There's no other way to describe this, especially if you see the usual photo. I don't know if you know that, but it was so famous, that the usual photo of taking off all the male artists from the posters of the festivals. You can see that, of course, female realities, and not only female realities, but, LGBTQ plus and female realities are minority, and extreme minority even. In tech, the percentage is a bit higher. Right now, following what I've checked just before starting this keynote, is 26.8 or something around, in between 17 and 26.8. But why I don't like much to, well, first of all, numbers are used in classrooms to make sure that you all understand why we're talking about equality and why we're talking about intersectionality. Still now, we are in, right now, July 2021, and I think I've been working with an association that is called She Said So of Women in Music since 8 years ago almost, and the numbers hasn't increased a bit. So COVID has been damaging. Actually, what has happened is like the taking care of kids, the leaving absence, the way you see that you have to take care of the kids, of the house. Even if we think that we are living in an equal couple world, even that is very difficult to manage. At the same time, what is happening in music is fantastic in a way because nobody sees it. But some of the biggest female artists are actually taking the step out of festivals, and I think festivals deserve that, and doing their own shows. You've seen Adele, but of course you've seen Dua Lipa, you've seen Olivia Rodrigo, and one example that comes from where I come from right now, I'm Italian but I live in Barcelona, is the Rosalia, which is actually started her tour yesterday, and is 15 countries, 45 dates. So I consider this, and including, of course, one of my darling, Billie Eilish, which I think is a fantastic example of female thriving star in the music business. We get to see that most of the women are stepping out of collective programming and trying to find their own business elsewhere. What I think it's interesting in this moment is that 2022, as I say in music, is fake. All the promoters, all the clubs, all the festivals are still booking people based on contracts that were signed in 2020. So they're like repeating lineups, being pressured by agents, say, oh, you can't cancel my show even if my artist hasn't released a record in 2 years. It's like this year is booming because, of course, people want to go out. They need to be together, but the lineups are confusing. At least the read of lineups are confusing. So I won't take the blame too much for 2022, but I would definitely put the attention and the blame on 2023. There's nothing right now that oblige people in 2023. They don't have a linking contract to 2020 and cancellations of COVID. So there's nothing that really obliged them to kind of not thinking about diverse lineups. And actually, there's the classical word, and again, a month ago, I was somebody I know very well, Dilly Mahat, promoter in France, and he told me in my face, I couldn't find women. And that was really hard for me to hear from a friend, because not only through She Said So, which is an organization I'm part of, and it was created by Andrea Magdalena back 8 years ago. We are more than 10,000 women in the world connected by a Google group. We share a lot of information. We are aware where we are. But it's not only She Said So. It's like you literally Google and you will find a lot of platforms like us, a lot of platforms that actually allow you to get to know and get to listen to the realities that are linked not only to women, but all the minorities that are not included in festivals. And why I say intersectionality, because and I know the word is worryful and it's in between brackets, but as a new feminist, feminism right now is not concentrating in women's only. It's concentrated on the word intersectionality, which is rediscover finally as a word that describes perfectly what women wants to conquer and what women wants to support, which is also all minorities based on gender, social background, or racial profiles. So it's really interesting to know that women are fighting for them. Women are going out for them and not only for the women's right. And I think this is one of the strongest leading discussion we have at She Said So, is that we need to pay attention to all these matters and not only how many women are in the festivals. It's like how many LGBTQ plus people are actually booked into the festival, volunteering in order to guarantee diversity. How many black people are booked in that festival? And not only festival, we meaning booking means promoting music in a venue. And I don't care if it's a festival, if it's a club, if it's a big venue of 2,000 or 300. It doesn't excuse the fact that should be and needs to guarantee diversity. Because actually is what I think kids want, is actually what the new generation wants. And one way to be engaged about it is that your audience asks to be engaged. How do you want to be engaged? You want to be engaged on sustainability, you want to be engaged on equality, you need to be engaged on all these matters because all these matters counts right now. And they are essential and primordial to the new generation. I teach a lot in classes in between 18 and 25, and every time I speak about intersectionality, their eyes shine. They understand that, they live that, they breathe that, they want to discuss it, they want to feel it, and they feel like they are on the verge of a sexual revolution, which is not at all like the 70s. It's a sexual revolution that includes a blurring line and less definition on who we are sexually, but also more definition about artistically, we're artists, independently of which genre we are and where do we sign. It's a curious example because when these conversations about festival and music comes up, I always said there's some part of truth, there's a huge truth about being non-diverse, but there is also a little part that has never been considered, is that you never ask the sexual orientation to an artist. Meaning that you actually can't count how many LGBTQ plus people you've had in your festival because you don't go and say, are you LGBTQ plus? So it's true that some of this data can be kind of deviating, but the real truth is that it needs to be public. It needs to be made a statement. And actually promoters that are willing to go out of the closet. Out of the closet mean I want to promote it. I consciously book these people. Intersectionality is also based, and lately I've been discussing a lot, and actually I will collaborate with a fantastic person in the UK called Nix. She created a Black Artist Database. If you don't know, Black Artist Database is a fantastic database on Black artists that is a common project that is created by her, and now there are like 13 people working together in order to enlarge a database that was created during COVID. So I'm talking to her, for instance, because all the data that we have mostly are based on the UK and the US, is where, most of the industry is. And I come from Italy and I live in Spain. And it's most where all the festivals are in summer. But at the same time, we know that all this data, they are not processing what is really happening in the South Mediterranean. And actually with Nix, I was talking about are you considering the black artists in the South Mediterranean area? This is something that, it's going deeper in the discussion. I'm interested in going deeper in this discussion. So the key to reaching this equality and diversity in the programming, in the music, and then we will talk about tech, because it's also something that is very close to my heart in this case, is like the only way is to really ask and be curious about. There's many solutions, many organizations and platforms, and we all work non-profit because we believe in values more than money, which can be strange, to tell you the truth, but it's so important that we actually balance this scenario of, one of the promoters always said to me, if you put a lot of women, but they're not headliners, I don't get as much money. And so the whole comes through back to the headliners. And that's why I use the Rosalia thing. Everybody wanted Rosalia as a headliner, and they didn't get it because she's going somewhere else. And she's going by her own concerts, her own shows, and doing her own money, which is like, losing the headliners in female acts and LGBTQ plus acts is a pity. You need to nurture them, you need to believe in them when they're not headliners. And headliner grows, and especially for next year, I dare to know how many headliners you're thinking in the head, because there won't be a lot unless we grow them from here to next summer. And even if there's a lot of release of records, there's a lot of things happening in music, the headliners, you build them. You get strong with them in clubs, in smaller venue, in mid-sized festivals until they reach the big ones. And this reaches the fact that promoters are not guilty only of that. They are not guilty actually unless the booking agencies, unless all the structure of the music industry allows this to happen. That's why we all build database, which is very strange. We all obliged to build database for the promoters, for the bookers, for everybody. Even to me, they come and say, do you have a database? Do you have contacts? Do you have names? And it's like, okay, but it's still about the database? It's like, you should have a database already. So that's why I use Nix as an example, because Black Artist Database, in a way, is fantastic. But the fact that we all, within the intersectional minorities, we are obliged to build database to make sure that you know how to reach that diversity is still very depressing. Because it's like, are we so non-visible? Are we so hidden in the Google universe and artificial intelligence algorithm? Is the algorithm so nasty to us? So I think that this is kind of something that we're trying to enlarge. I was asking to a friend of mine also about music producers, women music producers. And you're like, okay, tell me 10 women music producers. Most of the people, even deeply in the music industry, can answer 10 music producers, pure music producers, or music composers. I've been asked by amazing organizations, even the UK. So what I think it's, we need to have that in your memory. You need to have this visibility happen for real. Even if we talk, I didn't want this keynote to be about abstract terms. It's like, are you really looking? Are you really asking? Are you really asking your friends? Because that's how She Said So was built. It's an organic. We never spent the money on Meta, but we are there because everybody felt that it was the time and the place to discuss it and to enlarge the database. So what do brands want, for instance, right now? They do want our database. That's what we can survive out. It's like, oh, I have 10,000 women, mostly powerful in music. How much money will you give me to reach them? So this becomes, again, a kind of obsessive market of data, which is not what equality and diversity is about. Because a good programming that express diversity, express intersectionality, is made by consciousness, is by knowing that artist so well, is not done by machines and is not done by brands, is done by the promoter itself. And one of the things, because I've been working for a festival for so many years, is that promoting is a fantastic job that less and less young people want to do. And that's why also the scarcity of women. How many women promoters, aside the leading lady of Roskilde and the leading lady of Glastonbury, you know? You know, and for me, this year, for instance, for me, every year I have a mantra, and this year is PP, producer, promoter. Because if we don't have producers and promoters, how we can grow? We can grow in, you know, music business, booking, agents. I know them, they're there. But if we don't have in the artist the leading roles of where to go on stage, which is producer and promoter, we can't go on stage. We can be the greatest artist on the earth, but if we don't have the greatest producer, and if it's also women, better, or somebody part of the intersectional groups, even better. And if we don't have women promoters or promoters that are within the intersectional groups, how are we going to reach that equality? So it's not about a promoter handing on the lineup to women or LGBTQ+. It's a promoter being conscious and maybe elevating roles in their own company to make sure that that balance is backstage and on stage. And I'm very, very conscious about the backstage and on stage. I've been backstage in the music business for so long, and I have to say, I want my time to say, you know, grow women and grow intersectional minorities behind you, because that should be the next step coming. What happens in tech? Since I left the festival I used to work with, and I have been mentoring tech, two of the leading ladies I've been working a lot are here. One is Laura June from Munai, which is actually pitching later, a fantastic app which uses music to ease menstrual pain. And the other one is Annazo, which she invited me to be a mentor right in the time which I needed to do something else. And the fact is, with Anna, we also discussed, but especially with Laura June, my choice was conscious. I want to help a woman. I want to help a young woman. And I want to help a young woman that is both in music and in tech. Because we also need to lead tech, that's what this conference is about, in order to be at the forefront and in the future of the music business. So if we don't know what to do with NFT, then we learn. And if we don't know what to do about new apps like the one she's representing today, or new ways to understand music tech through the eyes of a woman. Actually, what this product did to me was, I want to talk about periods. I want to talk about things that are related to something called the female situation, which, you know, is not a secret. We are in 2022. So I think there's a lot of things to say. I only have 2 minutes and 36, which is just in front of me, but the time is right. Tech is, I'm also mentoring 2 more women in tech. I think that mentoring is definitely what women of my age, the granny of techno, should do. And it's helping other women and other minorities come up and raise their voice and have the contacts and reach the database. And this is the database we women in our moment, we offer for free. That's my database is for free for people that need to grow in the business and need to represent that diversity, need to be the strong people that actually represent equality. That's the ones I give my database for free. For the people that want it for their own women's washing, genre washing projects, it can be a completely money-oriented negotiation, but what is important is that you need to exchange this data in order to actually reach what we want. It will never be the 50-50, at least for now. I don't know if you know, Key Change is probably one of the biggest organizations funded by the BFI, by the British BPI, and I'm part of it too. One of the good things about being part of these networks is please join them, and don't be afraid if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're whoever you are. But the thing is, they are there to be reached, to be asked, to be, you know, I want to change the situation I'm in. I want to help these intersectional minorities. I want to be there for them. And this is what I think should be, at least for music and for tech, one of the biggest priorities in the next future. And I thank you very much for listening for my keynote.
Thank you so much, Georgia. Are you open for a few questions?
Of course.
Yes.
Sorry. I saw 0036 and I was like, wow.
Some questions? No questions?
Come
No,
on, be brave.
they are shy. Yes? Yeah?
Thank you very much. It's so nice to hear that today because it's so important, of course. How do you manage in these organizations to change like the technical team? Because maybe it's like the hardest to do, and there is so much mindset to change. And
By technical, you mean production?
yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I always use an example because working festivals, you really have your preferred, places to be. And even if I was the lady of comms and the lady of being more PR and stuff, I love production and security. And one of the things that I actually loved, and is at some point we had female security, and then I also changed in the pits female. Checkers of, it's just a question of finding them. And literally, the good thing is that I work a lot with France. And right now, it's really practical example. The She Said So France is a very big organization, the branch that we have in France. And they just launched an annuaire, which is called Majeur, which is in French, in the website. And they're all technical artists, all female that work in music can sign up and be visible there. And also I've meant, there is a scarcity of tech and production right now in 2022 is like very difficult. So of course, you can't be really judging what we have now because it's a very rare and odd situation. But I've known quite a nice bunch of ladies, for instance, in France, they're actually studying regie and production and tech. So, as I said, you need to have a referent. You need to have somebody that takes you there. And, for instance, in England, there is Maddie Purnell, which is probably the biggest female producer for me, and I used to know her personally, but she is a role model for music producer in England. And now there's Marta Salogni and there's more people, but you need to have a role model that is actually doing tech or production and is taking things. One of the countries I've seen more female-led production teams and tech is Brazil, because Brazil is very much developed in terms of music business. And when we did events there, actually I was working with lots of ladies in the tech backstage, and I was like, wow, this is new and this is cool. But depending on the countries, of course, and that's also one thing that we have to think. Not all the countries have the same level of equality. And even if we say that Scandinavia has an amazing level of equality, I've never seen a lot of women backstage on tech, for instance, and I work in Copenhagen and in Sweden. But, depending on how you perceive that is always up to a role model. And that's why I think that mentoring and be there and be very expression, like really talking about it. And I thank you very much, California, today for giving me a mic about this, because if somebody sees me, then they can think, okay, I need to change something, and I hope at some point it happens.
Hey, I'm Felix.
Hi, Felix.
I have a startup that does impact measurement for events. So one of the things that we have done in a few festivals is like measuring the composition of the lineup. And one of the problems that we have found, like seeing the composition of other lineups or what is the number that they are reporting. Many of them are using different methodologies. Yes. So sometimes it's like the amount of artists led by women, or sometimes it's the amount of female musicians. Do we include or do we not include the staff? So how do we agree on some sort of standard, or what do you think are the best practices or best examples on how to do this?
Well, as I said, stats-wise, because I was checking this big study that the BBC and YouGov done literally a month ago. Stats-wise, I don't believe the festival actually can be very, very specific on stats because of that. You won't ask an artist okay, sorry, are you gay? Because you won't. And so you don't know exactly how much representative in the intersection you have. You know, and within that, also minorities, you know. Even if you come from a country, maybe you're a country that is considered Africa, maybe you're the son of the king. It's in intersectional, this means that class-wise, you're on a different level than somebody that comes from a humble beginning. So, you know, that's why intersectionality is actually a cross-contamination, crossover, that is quite a nice way to think how intersectional is a festival, or how intersectional is a venue. Because it's not only about sexuality, it's also about race, and it's also about social background. So, for instance, in Catalonia, we have an artist that is Morad, which comes from a hardcore background, but it's headlining everywhere, and it's from Arab upbringing. So he will, in a way, if you think about Morad, it will be a very good example of reaching some kind of very balanced diversity, because but he's a man. But anyway, even if it's a man, it crosses over other paths. So I think that we can't use data like drop data like that and say, "Ooh, festival promoters, you know, what are you doing?" Unless you're conscious that this is impacting this crossover of scenario. And also, what do you have on backstage? It's like, oh, I have a lot of women. Yeah, okay, you have a lot of women, but they're all kind of ladies of the comm, the ladies of the PR, maybe some kind of digital marketing, not many. But, you know, where are the ladies in the website designing? Where are the ladies that actually are CEO, you know? And you know, I'm still obsessed with this thing that literally we have 5 women promoters in the space of public opinion kind of leading festivals. So this is something that really impacts me in the backstage area.
Thank you. Maybe a last question?
All good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Georgia.
so much.
Thank you.